I'm Charles McCall, and let me be perfectly clear. Cutting this banana does not make it an orange.
Charles McCall.
Charles McCall using the first official ad to come from his official campaign to target the issue of trans rights, as we are now 8 months out from the primary election for governor. This is, of course, a race that continues to add new candidates, and today we are breaking down where this race stands, especially with the folded GOP candidates, with our expert panel that we have with us here today. Great guests on the political left here. We have Erin Brewer with us, a former candidate for state senate and the vice chair of the Oklahoma Democratic Party. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. Also on the political right, Dave Bond. He's the vice president for advocacy with the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs, OCPA. You often hear it as. Dave, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Evan.
And this guy literally wrote the book on Oklahoma government and politics. I saw that. UCO professor Brett Sharp. Thanks for being here, Brett.
Thank you.
Well, let's start by talking about this. It's interesting because there's a lot of issues out there that these candidates want to and will talk about here in this race. They're going to choose what they talk about, I assume, very strategically, right, in these. And so for the McCall ad, this being, he's had other ads before, but this one's the first one from his official campaign to mention, the issue of trans. Is that just to make a splash? Just to make headlines, or is that still an issue that really you think is going to drive voters?
He's trying to stand out in a large and expanding field of candidates, and he's playing the culture warrior, which has been successful in Oklahoma politics. And it's, whatever you think of it, it's a memorable ad. You started talking about it, I just had a kind of smile. You won't forget it.
No, you really won't. Dave, what was your thought of that?
I thought it was a really great acknowledgement, not just of one issue, but just the fact that culture is still a big issue with voters right now, whichever side of the spectrum they are on. But I probably more so even with rightward-leaning voters in Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a really rightward-leaning state. I think each of the folks running on the Republican side wants to stand out as somebody who will acknowledge that every day that they're in office, and if there's a culture issue that comes up that they need to step in on behalf of Oklahomans, they are ready and willing to do that. And like he said, it's a very memorable ad, one of the most memorable we've seen in Oklahoma in a while.
And so, Erin, obviously the Democrat here at the table, and we're going to put a list up of all the GOP candidates. When you saw that ad, what is your thought? Because obviously you're not the target demo here.
Well, Charlie Banana, Banana Man McCall, just wait, the nicknames are coming. His opponents on both sides of the aisle are thrilled about that ad. They are just waiting for these nicknames to be able to come into play for them. It'll be a minute, it'll be closer to the primary before we start hearing it, but there will be callbacks to this ad, and I think Charles McCall is going to regret it.
Okay, interesting. Well, let's put the field up on the screen right now, because obviously we have the former speaker, Charles McCall. We have Gintner Drummond, who's the current Attorney General. We have Mike Mazzei, former state senator, Jake Merrick, former state senator, Lisa Haynes, who was a city manager in Mangum. We have Kenneth Sturgill, who's a business owner. Chip Keating is the most recent name to jump in, son of former Governor Frank Keating, of course, and a former Secretary of Public Safety. So you have a big list of names right here, Dave. I mean, a lot of these people, some of the names aren't as well known, but still, these are people that have won elections, that have gone through campaigns. They've done this. So they all are looking at how they can stand out in a crowded field with perhaps even bigger names above them. How do you stand out in a race like this one?
I think you play to their strengths. Several of them are successful business people, and that's obviously something that voters have shown favor to in recent election cycles, not just in Oklahoma, but obviously nationally as well. We have a president who did some of that too. So that's, I think, a big part of it. And also to show what they've done while they've been in office. I think all the ones who've been in office previously have some real track record that they can point to. I think you've got at least 5 very, very serious contenders on the Republican side, and at least 5 of them are going to be serious factors in the race and probably go into a runoff just like the last one did. And you could make a case for more than just 2 or 3 of them having a real shot to get there.
It's interesting with the Attorney General, Gintner Drummond, Brett, he's the only one that is in active state office at this moment. Is that an advantage for him?
Probably, and another advantage is he got in the race really early, which surprised everybody at the time, and he has statewide name recognition. Keating might have that as well, but he's never run, statewide race.
Sure.
But I think that's an advantage to have that. I've often thought that Drummond would have a harder time getting through the Republican primary. I think he would be a super strong candidate in the general.
Right. And you have Cindy Munson on the Democratic side. She's the only name in the list, Aaron, so we don't have the same issue that Republicans have. How are Democrats going into this gubernatorial race feeling, and what do you think they're focusing on?
Yeah, so we're really proud of Cindy Munson. She's the current minority leader of the state house and has done a phenomenal job. So she has a track record and she holds office today. She is known in her district and in the metro area of Oklahoma City for working really hard, for listening to constituents and then taking their issues forward to the state house. She's going to bring that work ethic and that listening to the state, and she's already on the statewide campaign trail. And there's renewed Democratic energy across the state. We have more activity than we've seen in years. That's going to help her in her statewide election.
Dave, do we expect anybody else on the GOP side to jump in? Obviously, there was some talk and rumors of Ryan Walters, the former state superintendent, throwing his name in the race. I don't see that happening now with all that's happened. Do you see anybody else jumping in?
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a couple more. There were 10 candidates when this was last an open seat 7 years ago.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a couple more, and I think we have some real contenders now. If you've won an election before, you have the potential to win another one. And you've got several people, as you said, who have won elections, some of them multiple elections. That's nothing to be sneezed at, and I think you have to take anybody who's won in a previous election seriously when they jump into something like this, whether or not they have great odds of making the runoff or just odds of really being a factor in how the final breakout goes.
And Brett, I'm interested in here. Is the landscape changing in how these things work, where you can get into a race later than maybe you once thought you had to do? Is the way media is different and you can reach people in different ways? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, well, the campaign infrastructure, I think, is important. So if you've run a campaign before, that helps. And then I think it also helps to get in early because you get the campaign monies committed and you kind of scare off some of the other candidates. But I know that I know this from leadership studies that it's often not the very first person who gets out, that actually gets the position. And electoral politics kind of plays out the same way, because oftentimes that the front runner gets kind of attacked by everybody, not just the other side, but in the primary from members of their own party. So it can be kind of challenging to do that.
While we're talking about primaries, I wanted to move now to State Question 836. Now, I mean, it's still in the beginning of the signature gathering stage. Mayor Holt has been out really pushing for this. This is basically, it would dramatically change Oklahoma's primary election. It's an open primary, top two type system. All the candidates, regardless of party, would go on one primary list, and then the top two would move into the general election. Aaron, is this something that Democrats would support, you think, in this state?
I think it's a great idea, and here's why. We saw that banana ad from Charles McCall already. That's really extreme. And what we've seen in Oklahoma politics over the last 10 or 12 years is this march toward a very right-wing extreme, especially in Republican primaries. And across Oklahoma, in some places, the primary is the general. There isn't an election in November. So we're disenfranchising a whole bunch of voters to begin with. But we're also pushing our politics extreme when we force candidates in a crowded primary to speak only to a portion of their base. An open primary where everyone gets to vote on the candidates, regardless of party, you got to talk to everyone. Well, that's when government works for
And it's interesting, Dave, obviously I want to hear your opinion on this, but this is what Mayor Holt said. He said signing and ultimately voting for this is a no-brainer unless someone is at the far edges of the ideological spectrum, a place very few people actually are. What's your take on this?
There's two states in America that have this exact system in place today, this top two jungle primary.
California is one of them.
California, Washington State, two of the most leftward places in North America. I don't think that's a coincidence when you look at how a system like this is geared to pull things leftward. We're starting at a different place in Oklahoma than those two states started out when they put this in place about 15 years ago.
The left has stayed in power in California. You could look at it that way, right? The minority hasn't come and taken over.
And I don't think anybody would try to say that the politics in California are not getting pretty far out there on the left-hand side of the spectrum. I think it's also really important to acknowledge, too, what this will do to independent third-party voters and candidates as well. It will force them to get all their kicks in the summertime, in the primary. and they will no longer be a factor in any way in a November general.
Interesting.
You will have 2 people on the ballot for any statewide or congressional office in Oklahoma, and odds are, if it's a truly competitive race, which a lot of those are, especially up ballot things like governor or U.S. Senate or a U.S. House seat, you're either going to have one candidate from either major party, or you're going to have 2 Democrats or 2 Republicans. That's been the experience in these other states. Independents are not making it into that mix in November.
Well, it's very early at this point. I appreciate your opinions on that. We're going to take a break right now. We have more with them over on YouTube and KOCO.com, as well as our Facebook. Hope you stick around and seek us out there online.